Well, I've been well, my dad grew up in England during the war, and he grew up in Kent, which was flyover for the German bombers coming to hit
Right.
London during the Blitz. And so I grew up on stories about Second World War and stories about my dad hiding under his bed and the unexploded bomb that landed in my grandparents'
Hmm.
backyard. And so it was just like, which if you're a 6-year-old boy and your dad's telling you those stories, it sounds like the coolest thing that could ever happen. I was, and so I've been a military kind of buff for my entire life, but I've never found a story I wanted to tell. And then I sort of stumbled on this. I was spending all this time with Air Force guys, and I just kind of stumbled onto this world that was centered around Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama in the 30s. And it was so magical and so strange. And the thing about Maxwell is that they have all of this archival, they have these incredible archives where they have taped interviews with every single major Air Force figure from the 30s on. And I wanted this book was was an audiobook first. We created the audiobook and then the print book is a spin-off. And I just realized, oh my goodness, I can tell a story here. I've got all this tape, I can bring this history to life, and I can explore this weird thing about these pilots who thought they could, this called the Bomber Mafia, who thought they could reinvent war and how they almost pulled it off.
Yeah, this is. I gotta be honest. It seemed I was not taken aback, but I was surprised to see you writing a book about military shit. Right, but I like your work, so I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to read this. I read the whole book last night on the plane in about 2.5 hours, I think.
Mhm.
This is the best book I've ever read dealing with the social psychology surrounding military leadership, especially. Like, it's not even close. This is actually one of my top 5 favorite books right now.
Oh my God. Thank you.
It's incredible. And now if you don't know, I was a sergeant in the 82nd Airborne in the infantry back in the day during the Iraq War. So I've got
Oh,
plenty of combat and plenty of combat leadership experience. This is brilliantly written. I mean, it's the research you did is great. The way that you animate the mindset of the commanders on the ground, both their flaws and their strengths and things like that, and then wrap it up in a narrative that still leaves some questions to be answered at the end and leaves room for conversation is one of the best pieces of work that I've ever seen. So
oh my God.
I really appreciate you writing this. And I think
Thank you.
our fans who are primarily military and first responder will really enjoy this one.
Yeah. I got to say, when I was doing this book, I hung out a lot with Air Force leadership, with both the outgoing and the incoming Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And I came away with this with such respect for that institution. To the point, I forget whether I tell the story or not in the book, but I was watching, in the middle of the pandemic, they changed the leadership of the Air Force. The General Goldfein retired, and they brought in this guy, General Brown. And I watched the whole ceremony online, and I was in tears by the end because it was so dignified and so. I mean, all of the speeches everyone gave were fantastic. It was, the first African American chief of staff of the Air Force in the Air Force's history. It was nobody talked. It was the middle of that. Last summer was crazy on so many levels. No one talked about politics, not a single word. It was about serving your country, building a strong institution to defend our country against our enemies, about giving opportunities to people who, want to make that sacrifice. I mean, it was just like, it was so beautiful. And I thought, if I can do nothing else with this book, I'd like to capture some of that spirit that these people who built the Air Force, who made it what it is, are people who were motivated by something more than, the desire to win wars. They were motivated by bigger,
Right.
moral things, and that was beautiful to me.